My name is Cassie Vance. I am 34 years old, a single mother to a creative, kind-hearted little girl named Lily. I work as a freelance graphic designer by day and a bakery assistant on weekends. My life a carefully balanced act of deadlines, flower dust, and bedtime stories. We get by, but the margin for error is terrifyingly thin. I've built a fortress of quiet resilience around us, forged from the judgments and whispered pity of those who think they know my story. The night everything shifted began at my younger sister's rehearsal dinner. Chloe Vance was the bride-to-be, radiant, polished, and floating on a cloud of unquestioned adoration in a designer gown that likely cost more than my used sedan. We hadn't spoken meaningfully in over a year. Not since she joked at a barbecue that my life was a cautionary tale about following your heart. I'd let it go then, swallowing the hurt with a tight smile, but the barb had never dissolved. So when the thick linen paper invitation arrived, elegant calligraphy, a wax seal, I felt a familiar dread. My father called twice to insist I attend. Just be there, Cassie, for the family. Smile, be pleasant, don't make waves. That was the family mantra. So I went. For him, for the illusion of unity, for Lily. I found my one good cocktail dress, steamed out the wrinkles, and let Lily clasp the necklace for me. She chose a simple silver locket, the one with her tiny picture inside. "So you can have me with you," she'd said. We walked into the opulent hotel ballroom together. Crystal chandeliers, the soft clink, fine china, the low hum of money and privilege. The air itself felt expensive, and I could immediately sense it. The subtle shift in glances, the polite, practiced smiles that didn't reach eyes, the unspoken hierarchy I was meant to know my place in. But what I didn't know as I smoothed my slightly too tight dress was that I wouldn't leave that room feeling small. The narrative, carefully crafted by my family for years, was about to shatter. The laughter would falter. The spotlight would swing. And for the first time in a decade, someone would speak up, not for decorum, but for me. Chloe and I were inseparable once, building forts and sharing secrets. But time carved different paths. She became the star. Ivy League, high-powered PR career, a fairy tale engagement to a tech millionaire. I fell in love with a poet, got pregnant at 24, and found myself alone and determined to keep us afloat when he decided responsibility was too heavy a burden. The difference wasn't just in our life trajectories. It was in the roles our family assigned us. Chloe was the success. I was the what happened to poor Cassie. At the dinner, I was placed at a table near the kitchen doors with my well-meaning but nervous father and my Aunt Susan, who spent the first 15 minutes discussing the merits of various European spas, her eyes avoiding the faint stain on my clutch. Chloe moved through the room like a socialite queen, bestowing air kisses and hollow compliments. Her gaze slid over me like I was a piece of familiar furniture. When she did stop, it was with a look of performative surprise. "You made it," she said, her voice sweet as syrup but her eyes cool. "And you brought a +1?" She glanced down at Lily. "Just us," I said, keeping my voice even, my hand on Lily's shoulder. "How quaint," she replied, already turning away. "There's a children's activity corner over there with a minder. I'm sure she'll be more comfortable." My father leans in, his voice low. "Just enjoy the dinner, Cass. Don't, you know." I tried to become invisible. Lily, bless her, found the activity corner and was immediately absorbed in decorating a cupcake, completely unaware of the social minefield. I passed bread baskets and nodded along to conversations about stock portfolios and summer homes, a ghost at the feast. I was the charity case they had to include, the living reminder that not all Vance women landed on their feet. My late nights hunched over a laptop, my hands raw from washing baking sheets, my fierce pride in raising a brilliant, kind-hearted daughter, none of it mattered in this room. My story had been written for me, a tragedy. The moment came during the dessert course, just as the champagne flutes were being refilled for another toast. Chloe stood with practiced elegance, tapping her glass with a manicured finger. The room fell into an expectant hush. I just want to say how blessed I am to be surrounded by such love, such support on this journey. She paused for the approving murmurs. Then her eyes, sharp and seeking a punchline, landed on me. A sly smile touched her lips. It really makes you appreciate having a real partner, someone who builds you up, not someone who, well, let's just say I hope I'm never scrambling to find a date for my own sister's wedding. The room erupted in laughter. Not uncomfortable tittering, but full, robust laughter. My Uncle Robert, her father, chuckled into his cognac. Ain't that the truth? No one wants damaged goods twice over. Even my Aunt Susan offered a weak, complicit smile. I sat frozen. The heat of 1,000 suns bloomed on my cheeks. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped, frantic bird. I focused on a crack in the tablecloth, my vision blurring, my knuckles white as I gripped the seat of my chair. Across the room, Lily looked up from her glitter glue, her smile fading as she sensed the tension. I wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the ornate carpet. Not a single person spoke. Not one. The silence of those who were uncomfortable was just as damning as the laughter. It was easier to let the joke stand. It was easier to sacrifice me to maintain the evening's perfect facade. Chloe, buoyed by the response, was about to continue her speech when Liam, her fiancé, stood up. He didn't say a word. He simply pushed his chair back and started walking, not toward the restroom or the bar, but directly toward my table. The laughter died abruptly. Forks clattered onto plates. Chloe's smile remained fixed, but confusion flickered in her eyes as he passed her by. He stopped right beside my chair. The entire ballroom was holding its breath. I think there's something you all should know, Liam said, his voice calm but carrying to every corner of the silent room. Chloe blinked. Liam, honey, what are you... He held up a hand, not looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the guests, on my family. That wasn't a joke, Chloe. That was cruel. He let the words hang in the air before turning to address the room. You all look at Cassie and you see what you've decided to see. A struggle, a mistake, someone to pity or mock at a dinner party. My breath caught in my throat. What was he doing? What you don't see, he continued, his voice gaining strength, is the most resilient woman I've ever met. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't happening. 3 years ago, my first startup collapsed. I lost everything. My investors pulled out. My confidence was shattered. I was drowning in debt and shame. He looked around the room, making eye contact with my uncle, my father, Chloe's smug friends. Chloe told me to think positive. Your father, he said, nodding toward her uncle, offered me to loan me money at a steep interest rate. Then he turned and looked directly at me, his expression one of profound gratitude. Cassie was the one who actually helped. She spent her one free night a week for months helping me. She redesigned my entire pitch deck and branding for free. She introduced me to a small business angel investor she'd done pro bono work for, a connection that directly led to the funding for my current company. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the plush carpet. She never asked for a thing, never sent an invoice, never mentioned it to anyone. When I tried to pay her back after we secured funding, she refused. She said, just help someone else out when you can. Liam's voice softened. The success of my company, the reason I could afford this wedding, a significant part of that foundation was built by her, by the woman you just laughed at. The air was thick enough to choke on. Chloe stood rigid, her composure finally cracking. Why are you doing this? She hissed, her voice trembling with rage and humiliation. Do you have feelings for her? He looked at her with something akin to pity. I have respect for her. A respect I'm realizing you and most of this family are incapable of understanding. Because you're so busy performing a perfect life, you can't recognize real strength when it's sitting right in front of you. His words hung there, dismantling the entire evening, the carefully constructed narratives, the hierarchy of worth. I glanced around. My uncle stared into his drink. My father looked ashamed. My aunt studied her napkin. The guests were a sea of averted eyes. In that crushing silence, I found a strength I didn't know I had. It wasn't a loud strength. It was a quiet, solid certainty. I stood up, not dramatically, but slowly, surely. I didn't look at Chloe or my uncle. I looked at Liam and gave him a small, grateful nod. It was enough. Then I turned to my daughter. "Ready to go, Sweet Pea?" Lily nodded, clutching her glittery cupcake in one hand and slipping her other trusting hand into mine. We didn't say goodbye. We simply walked out. As we passed Liam, he gave me the same slight nod, an acknowledgement, a silent thank you. I held my daughter's hand and walked out of that ballroom with my spine straight and my head high. I didn't need their apologies or their approval. The truth was out. Liam had handed me my story back, and it was far more powerful than the one they'd tried to write for me. The cool night air didn't feel like an escape. It felt like a beginning. They had laughed at the single mom, the charity case, the ghost at the table, but they hadn't known about the architect.